There was a sound in a black house on a Tuesday night in 1967 that meant more than any bell, any alarm, any church chime ever could. It was the sound of a cast iron skillet hitting the eye of the stove. A little scrape, then a settle. Then that low hiss when the grease finally got hot enough to talk back. That sound meant somebody was home. That sound meant no matter how the day had gone, no matter how many hours somebody had stood on their feet, no matter how the boss man had talked to them, no matter how tired their bones were, somebody in that house was fixing to feed the people they loved. There wasn't always much in the icebox. Some weeks there wasn't much of anything. A little flour, a little grease, some eggs if the hens were laying, some milk if the milkman had run that week. And still, something came out of that kitchen that made a child forget they'd been hungry an hour before. Now, people call that resourcefulness today. They call it a life hack. They put it on a television show with somebody in a chef coat explaining how to make peasant food taste elevated. Child, we didn't need it elevated. It was already high enough. It was made with love, and love don't need a garnish. Tonight I want to take you back into those kitchens, the real ones. The ones with the linoleum peeling up in the corner and the radio turned low on the counter. I want to show you 25 meals that came out of almost nothing and fed a whole family with something the world still hasn't found a name for. Hey family, I'm James. And if you've been with me a while, you know exactly what we do here. We go back, way back. Tonight we're going back into the struggle meals, the improvised suppers, the ones that came together at the end of a long week when the money had run out but the mouths hadn't stopped being hungry. Now, before we get into it, if this is your first time sitting at this table with me, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. We're building something here, family, a place where the folks who remember and the folks who want to remember come together. So go on and subscribe, ring that bell, and let's go on back into the kitchen. Number 1, the mayonnaise sandwich. Now I know how that sounds to somebody who's never lived it. Just mayonnaise on white bread, that's it. But let me tell you something. When that was what was in the icebox on a Wednesday, that sandwich tasted like something. Big Mama would take 2 slices of soft white bread, spread that mayonnaise thick to the edges, maybe crack a little black pepper over the top if she had it, and cut it corner to corner. She'd hand it to you like it was a whole meal because it was. Didn't apologize for it, didn't explain it. You ate it standing up at the counter, and you didn't ask questions because somewhere in your bones you understood. Mama fed you before she fed herself that day. Number 2, the syrup sandwich. This one traveled with the community. Cane syrup, sometimes molasses if that's what was on the shelf, poured slow between 2 pieces of bread. Or, better yet, between a split-open biscuit still warm from the oven. The syrup would soak down into the bread and turn the whole thing dark and sticky. And you'd eat it with both hands because there was no clean way to eat it. Kids took these to school in wax paper. Grown men took them to the plant in a paper sack. It wasn't dessert. It was breakfast, lunch, and sometimes dinner, and it kept a body moving through a whole shift. Number 3, the egg sandwich, fried hard, folded flat. Not scramble soft and fluffy like you might do it today. Fried hard in bacon grease that had been saved in a coffee can on the back of the stove, folded over on itself so the yolk went solid all the way through, and slapped between 2 pieces of bread with a little salt. Big Mama could stretch a dozen eggs into 6 meals if she had to. That coffee can of grease, family, that thing was sacred. Every house had one. Every house guarded it. Nothing went to waste. Not the grease from the bacon, not the fat off the roast, not one single thing that could be used again. Number 4, fried bologna, cut in a cross so it wouldn't curl up in the pan. You'd hear that little snap and sizzle the second it hit the hot skillet, and the edges would go dark and crispy while the middle stayed soft. Put it between 2 pieces of bread with a little mustard, maybe a slice of that cheese that came wrapped in plastic, and you had yourself a meal that a working man could eat in the truck on his way to a second job. My granddaddy worked 6 days a week and never once complained, and more nights than I can count. Fried bologna was what carried him through the evening shift. Number 5, Vienna sausages straight out of the can, eaten with saltine crackers. Now this one, family, this was the meal at the end of the money, the end of the week before payday, when the icebox had gone quiet and there wasn't a fresh thing left in the house. Somebody would reach up in the cabinet and pull down that little can, pop the top, and lay those pale little sausages out on a plate with a sleeve of crackers next to it. Wasn't glamorous, wasn't supposed to be, but it filled a stomach, and it bought the family 2 more days until the check came in. Number 6. Buttermilk and cornbread, crumbled together in a glass. This one's older than most of us. Big Mama would take a wedge of leftover cornbread from the night before, crumble it up in a jelly jar glass, and pour cold buttermilk right over the top of it until it went soft and thick, almost like a pudding. You ate it with a spoon, standing at the icebox door, in the heat of a summer evening when nobody wanted to cook a full meal, cool going down, filling in a way that stuck with you. Number 7. Plain grits with nothing but butter and a little sugar if there was any in the house. No bacon that morning, no eggs either maybe. Just a pot of grits, stirred slow so they didn't scorch on the bottom, and whatever you had to dress them up. Some mornings it was butter and black pepper. Some mornings, if the sugar bowl wasn't empty, a spoonful of sugar melted right in. Either way, that pot of grits sent a house full of children out the door with something warm in their belly. And that was the whole job of breakfast back then. Not fancy, just warm and just enough. Number 8. Milk toast. You don't hear that phrase much anymore, family, and there's a whole generation walking around now that's never once tasted it. Toasted bread, broken up in a bowl, warm milk poured over it, a little butter and sugar stirred through. Old folks made it for children who were sick. Old folks made it for themselves when there wasn't much else and the stomach needed something soft and gentle. It was medicine and supper at the same time, and Big Mama knew exactly when a body needed one instead of the other. Number 9. Tomato gravy over biscuits. Now, this is the one where the garden started to matter. Come late summer, when the tomatoes had come in heavy and there were more of them than one family could eat fresh, Big Mama would cook them down slow in a skillet with a little flour, a little bacon grease, salt and pepper, until it turned into a thick, tangy, rust-colored gravy. Poured hot over a split biscuit, that gravy turned bread into a meal that tasted like the whole summer had been poured into one pan. That right there, that's something we need to bring back. Now, before we keep going, family, I want to hear from you. Everybody had one of these meals in their own house, the one that meant money was tight, but love wasn't. So, tell me, what was the struggle meal in your house? What did your mama or your grandmama make when the money ran short before payday? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one of them, and I promise you, somebody watching this right now made the exact same thing in a kitchen 1,000 miles from yours, and neither one of you ever knew the other existed. That's the thing about this. We were all connected before we even knew each other's names. Now, let's keep going, because the meals get deeper from here. These next ones, these were the ones that came out of the pot. The ones that took time and patience and a woman who knew how to make one chicken back stretch across a whole family for 2 days. Number 10. Neck bones and rice. Neck bones were cheap because most folks in the butcher shop didn't want them. Big Mama knew better. She'd get a pot of water going, drop those neck bones in with an onion, some salt, some pepper, maybe a bay leaf if she had one, and let it simmer low for hours until the meat started falling clean off the bone and the broth turned rich and dark. Served over a mound of white rice. That pot fed 6, 7, 8 people off of meat the store practically gave away. The whole house would smell like Sunday, even on a Tuesday. Number 11. Smothered potatoes, sliced thin, cooked down slow in a cast iron skillet with a little onion, a little bacon grease, until they went soft and started to caramelize at the edges. No meat needed most nights. The potatoes were the meal. Big Mama would put a lid on that skillet and let it steam itself soft. And by the time she took the lid off, the whole kitchen had gone warm and heavy with that smell. Onion and potato and grease, folding into each other. You'd eat it with a piece of cornbread, and you'd eat every bit of it because there wasn't a second helping coming. Number 12. Fried cabbage with cornbread. A whole head of cabbage cost next to nothing, and it could stretch across a week if you were careful with it. Shredded down, fried in that same skillet with a little grease and a little sugar to take the bitterness off. Cooked until it went soft and sweet at the edges. Served next to a wedge of cornbread, hot from a cast iron pan that had been in the family longer than some of the children eating from it. This was Monday food, Tuesday food, The food that carried a family through the middle of the week when Sunday's dinner was long gone and payday was still far off. Number 13. Pinto beans and cornbread, cooked all day on the back burner. This one's a whole institution, family. A pound of dried pinto beans, soaked overnight, cooked low and slow the next day with a little onion, a little salt pork if there was any in the house, sometimes nothing but water and patience. By evening, those beans had gone thick and creamy, and a pot of them could feed a family for 2 or 3 nights running. Big Mama would ladle them over rice, or just serve them alongside a wedge of cornbread for dunking. Folks don't cook like that anymore. Nobody's got the patience for a pot that takes all day. But that pot of beans taught a whole generation that the best things take time, and there's no shortcut worth taking on something that's feeding your family. Number 14, turnip greens and the pot liquor underneath them. Now, this one right here, this is sacred, family, and I don't use that word lightly. Turnip greens, cooked down for hours with a ham hock or a piece of fat back, until the greens went dark and tender, and the liquid underneath turned into something folks called pot liquor. That liquid was gold. Big Mama would sop it up with a piece of cornbread, and she'd tell you, child, the liquor's got more nutrition in it than the greens themselves. You didn't waste a drop. You didn't pour it down the sink. You drank it, you sopped it, you savored it, because it was the whole reason the greens had cooked so long in the first place. Number 15, souse meat, what some folks called head cheese. I know this one might sound rough to some of you listening tonight, but I want you to understand something about it before you turn your nose up. Nothing went to waste in a black kitchen in 1965. Nothing. The parts of the hog that other folks threw away, Big Mama turned into something that fed the family and honored the animal that gave its life to do it. Cooked down, seasoned with vinegar and hot pepper, set in a loaf pan to cool and firm up, sliced thin and served cold on a piece of bread. That's not poverty food, family. That's genius. That's a woman who understood that waste was a sin she couldn't afford to commit. Now, real quick, before we go any further, I put together something I want to tell you about. These recipes I'm sharing with you tonight, they're just a piece of what's out there, a piece of what almost got lost forever. I gathered up 100 of these recipes, the real ones, the forgotten ones, written out the way Big Mama would have done it herself, complete, patient, and true, into something called the Soul Roots Cookbook. It's in the description below, and it's pinned in the comments too. You can scan the code on your screen right now if that's easier for you. Family, don't let these recipes disappear the way so many already have. Number 16, fried Spam and rice. Spam showed up in a lot of black households in the years after the war, and it stuck around because it was cheap, it kept without refrigeration, and it fried up into something that tasted almost like ham if you were hungry enough and seasoned it right. Sliced thin, fried crisp at the edges, served over rice with a little gravy made from the drippings. This was a payday stretching meal, a keep in the cabinet for emergencies meal, and more than a few children grew up thinking Spam and rice was just what supper was supposed to taste like. Number 17, salmon croquettes. A can of salmon, some crushed crackers, an egg to bind it, a little onion and pepper for flavor, formed into patties and fried golden in a skillet. This one stretched one can of fish into a meal for a whole family. And it showed up on Friday nights in a lot of houses, sometimes for reasons that had less to do with money and more to do with faith. Plenty of families held to not eating meat on certain days, and salmon croquettes filled that gap beautifully. Crispy on the outside, soft and flaky in the middle, served with a little rice and whatever vegetable was in season. Number 18, poke salad, gathered wild from the edge of the yard or the ditch along the road. Now, this is the one that shows you just how deep the resourcefulness ran. Poke greens grew wild, free, if you knew how to find them and how to cook them properly, because the plants got to be boiled more than once to take the danger out of it. Big Mama knew, her mama had taught her, and her mama's mama before that. Boiled down, drained, boiled again, then finished in a skillet with a little bacon grease and scrambled eggs folded through at the end. A meal that cost nothing but time and inherited knowledge, knowledge that could feed you when the store-bought greens weren't in the budget that week. Number 19, chicken feet, cooked down into a thick gelatinous stew with dumplings dropped on top. Folks pass right by chicken feet at the store today, if the store even carries them anymore. But Big Mama knew those feet held more flavor and more body in a broth than almost any other part of the bird. Cooked for hours until the broth turned rich and thick on its own. No flour needed to thicken it, the feet did that work themselves. And then dumplings dropped right on top to steam in that broth until they went soft and pillowy. This was a whole Sunday's worth of comfort made from a part of the chicken most folks today wouldn't even look twice at. Number 20. Chitlins, cleaned and cooked slow on Christmas Eve. I know some of y'all are shaking your head right now, and that's all right. But family, I want you to understand what this dish actually was in the house it came from. It wasn't punishment. It wasn't the bottom of anybody's barrel. Cleaning chitlins was a whole ritual. Hours of careful work, usually done together. Women in the kitchen with the windows cracked, talking and laughing while they worked, passing down the method the same way their mothers had passed it to them. And when it was done, when that pot finally came together with vinegar and hot sauce and onion, it meant Christmas had arrived. It meant the family had made it through another year together. That smell, love it or not, meant home to a whole generation of us. Number 21. Red beans and rice, cooked every single Monday without fail. Now, this wasn't just a meal, family. This was a schedule. Monday was wash day in most black households, and wash day back then meant standing over a tub or a wringer washer for hours, no time, and no hands free to cook a fussy dinner. So, the beans went on the stove in the morning, low and slow, with whatever bit of ham bone was left over from Sunday's dinner, and by evening, without anybody having to stand over that pot all day, supper was ready. Red beans and rice on Monday was as certain as church on Sunday. You could set your calendar by it. Number 22. Fatback and collard greens with cornbread crumbled right down into the pot. Liquor. By the time you get to this one, you understand the pattern, family. The fatback wasn't the star. It was the flavor, the fat that carried everything else. A small piece could season a whole pot of greens for a family of 8. And when the greens were done, somebody would crumble a wedge of cornbread right down into the bowl, right into that dark, rich liquor, and eat it with a spoon like a stew. Wasn't fancy. Wasn't meant to be photographed. It was meant to fill you up on a cold night with almost nothing spent to make it happen. Number 23. Rice with butter, sugar, and a little cinnamon when there was truly nothing else left. I want you to sit with this one for a moment, family, because this is where the struggle got real. Some nights, at the very end of the week, at the very end of the money, there was nothing left in that kitchen but a bag of rice. And Big Mama, she wouldn't let that mean an empty plate. She'd cook that rice soft, stir in whatever butter was left, whatever sugar was in the tin, a shake of cinnamon if she had it, and she'd serve it to her children warm and tell them it was a treat. A treat. Not a shortage, not a lack, a treat. That, right there, is a kind of love I don't have the full words for. Number 24. Water gravy, poured over rice or a split biscuit. This is the one, family. This is the bottom of the barrel, and I'm not going to dress it up as anything other than what it was. Flour, browned in a little bit of leftover grease, sometimes barely a spoonful, scraped from the bottom of that coffee can, thinned out with water instead of milk, because there wasn't any milk left, seasoned with salt and pepper, until it tasted like something more than what it actually was. Poured hot over rice or over a biscuit split open. It filled a stomach when there was truly nothing else in that house to eat. And I want you to understand, nobody who ate that gravy as a child remembers being ashamed of it. They remember being fed. They remember their mother standing at that stove, refusing to let her children go to bed hungry, even when the cupboard had gone bare. That's not poverty, family. That's the deepest kind of love there is, the kind that shows up when it's got nothing left to give and gives anyway. And number 25, Big Mama's own plate. Now this last one isn't a recipe at all, and I want you to really hear me on this one, because in every single kitchen I've told you about tonight, in every house that served fried bologna or water gravy or chicken feet with dumplings, there was one thing that stayed the same. Big Mama served everybody else first. She filled her children's plates. She filled her husband's plate. She made sure the neighbor's child who had wandered in hungry that evening had a plate too. And only after every single person at that table had been fed, only then, did she sit down. And some nights, family, by the time it was her turn, what was left wasn't much. A heel of cornbread, a little pot liquor in the bottom of the pot, sometimes just a cup of coffee and the satisfaction of watching her family eat their fill. That was her meal. That was the struggle meal nobody ever wrote down because she never once called it a sacrifice. She called it being a mother, and every single dish we talked about tonight, every one of them, came out of that same well. Not a well of lack. A well of a love so deep, it could turn nothing into something every single night for as long as it took. Now, family, if any of this brought something back for you tonight, a smell, a sound, a memory of a kitchen that isn't there anymore, go on and hit that like button. Subscribe so you're here every time we sit down at this table together. And I want you to drop a comment for me. Tell me the poorest meal your family ever made, the one that came from truly having nothing else in the house, and tell me how it tasted anyway. I read every single one of these, and I promise you, somebody out there needs to read your story tonight, just as much as you need to tell it. Because here's what I know after all these years, family, the measure of a meal was never what was in it. It was who made it and who it was made for, and how much of themselves they poured into a pot that most folks would have looked at and called empty. Big Mama never had much to work with, but she never once let that stop her from feeding her family like they were the richest people on this earth. And in the way that matters most, family, they were. Share this one with somebody in your family who still remembers those meals, the aunt who still makes water gravy the old way, the uncle who still won't touch a plate of greens without pot liquor underneath. This might be exactly the nudge they need to sit down and tell you how it was really made before that knowledge goes quiet for good. Subscribe, because next time, we're going somewhere just as real as tonight. I'll see you next time, family.